We're gonna dive deep into how knees over toes guy can help you increase your vertical jump.
I'm gonna show you exactly how I did it.
And we're gonna start right now. So we went down and visited Ben Patrick, AKA Knees Over Toes Guy, and we tried to figure out what are his secrets, right? What are the things that he's putting out there that we can use to enhance sports performance, to enhance recovery, and in specific instances, improve the vertical jump. Everybody's seen Ben, dunking basketballs and jumping all over the place, even after all the knee surgeries that he's had. And so our goal was to figure out what specifically is he doing to increase his vertical jump. And so we had this conversation. I was able to ask Ben directly, and he came back with a few key points based around sled work, based around thought process, based around specific cues that he likes to use to help improve his vertical jump. So we're gonna check that out, and we're gonna see what we think about that.
The sled, I haven't seen any article or video that says, here's the #1 exercise to jump higher.
Right.
But you're a coach, you're an athlete. We just did the sled together. Does it make sense why I have like a 40-inch vertical?
Yes.
Even though we only did the sled? Yeah. Explain that to me.
Going back to the cue, because I think if you're intentionally, thinking, drive forward with the sled, it's almost like, it's like a weighted jump almost.
Yeah.
Through the concentric motion. So it's like, when you were cueing that, for me, I've done the sled quite a bit, but not to your level. And that's where I was thinking, I'm going, if he's cueing me on this, if Ben's saying this, you're constantly thinking that when you're pushing. So you're thinking that over and over and over again, and you might not even be, consciously thinking it's just happening no matter what. So it's like, you're so coordinated to drive that load, and that's where it's gonna transfer to the jump.
Yeah, and so when we're pushing, we're in that jumping position.
Right.
But then when we're going backward, we're in this position that's crucial for landing.
For landing, yeah.
So I'm in basketball. Basketball, I can't just peak my vertical up in the off season and then go into the season and be destroyed.
Right.
For basketball, I need to be end of a game, fourth quarter,
right,
and I'm still bouncy.
Yeah, and that, so one, the endurance aspect, yeah. Two, the actual intent of accelerating as much as possible, and then three, that deceleration, yep, you absorb a little better, and then you can react quicker then as well.
Yep. I'm trying to do the same thing you are when you get stronger in a lift. Yeah. You have to get stronger to jump higher.
And so that was another thing too, is that when you were cueing in the beginning, drive through the big toe, drive through the big toe. High jumpers will always think about at the toe off position. Okay, wow. So toe off. Wow. Essentially big toe off.
Yeah.
And when I'm thinking about that, if you jump off of one leg, so maybe not necessarily directly to the vertical, but to the court, if you're jumping off of one leg, that cue, the first cue you gave me was essentially the toe off cue. It was focus on what your big toe is doing. Then your foot starts to activate even more. Then your Achilles is starting to get a little bit stronger, and that's going to transfer to more joint stiffness, which leads to bigger jumps.
Yep.
All right, so what is my thought? What's my thought process? Ben just blew my mind because he's doing a whole bunch of sled work that's going to increase his vertical jump. And again, just like I mentioned in the video, where some of those key points are the cues. Driving through that big toe, drive forward, and he had even said like jump forward with it. And I think that oftentimes when we have athletes, like high school football players actually are notorious for this, especially linemen. You'll see them pushing a sled and they're really upright like this, and they're sort of just flailing their knees all over the place instead of driving forward. And I think that that's where we're missing out on that concentric action, and I think that could lead to drastic improvement in your vertical jump. And if you typically jump off of two legs, you might struggle with the coordination of jumping off of one. And so using that sled work is going to be paramount. Another factor was focusing on driving through the big toe, keeping your Achilles very stiff so that your heel doesn't drop as you're driving. Keep that tension through that heel as you push forward. And that's where a lot of that power is going to come out of. One of the things that I was surprised by is like everybody thinks about just load the sled up as heavy as possible. We've all seen James Harrison pushing thousands of pounds on the sled, which is fine. But if we're looking for more rapid rates of coordination, which a vertical jump is, we don't need a ton of weight on it, 2, 3, 45s, and that's it, as long as you're focusing on those proper cues. And even thinking about it from that high jump perspective, the toe off, these are different aspects that Jesus DePina has mentioned in all of his biomechanic analysis of the high jump. And so that does come into play as well. I think he's got a really good point here. And again, this doesn't need to be crazy. 8 lengths, 10 lengths, and even walking backwards will increase your ability to ground. And if you can ground and then react quicker, now you can do other plyometric movements that will also help improve your vertical jump. So Ben ends up bringing us through an entire, KOT workout where basically we do hamstring, Nordic hamstring pulls, we do tibialis raises, and then we start to think about how does this play into increasing our vertical jump as well? Because that's the main goal for some of this, for this specific video as well, is that the main goal is sports performance in our case. So now we're gonna go into the Nordic hamstring pull, we're gonna go into tibialis raise and what that can do for increasing our vertical jump. So if you're training, I wanted to bring up, when we're talking about the vertical jump in the sled, I have a couple thoughts that I wanted to ask around, like let's say you train the sled, that's your best movement for increasing your jumps on the court. You would do these 3, the Nordic pulls, the tibialis, and that once or twice a week. How many?
Yep. Okay. So I do legs 2 days a week.
Okay.
And starts with the sled. Then we work on leg strength.
Right.
1 day split squats, 1 day deep squats. But we finish with triple flexion. And as I showed, there's a variety of ways. This thing is badass. So I find 10% of your body weight on here, I find is just as tough as 10% on here. Okay. They both have some internal resistance, so you can take that to tap out. And then Nordic benches need to be in more gyms. I know yours has one. Yeah. You could also work on the hamstring curl machine, nothing wrong with that. However, getting a Nordic bench into your gym is gonna be a good idea for longer term progress. Right. And then here, the monkey foot is awesome that you can attach a weight to it. And so if you keep the back leg straight, you can take it until you can't get the knee up. Right. So you have a measurable drill there. And these are lower ab straps hooked up. So we're just taking the concept of being strong, but then applying the reverse, ankles, knees, and hips, pulling tighter, and then taking those to tap out as well. And that's my classic leg day.
Okay, so Ben just went through his entire leg day and how triple flexion, and this is actually, ironically, something that Al Vermeil brings up quite a bit. Al Vermeil was the Chicago Bulls head strength and conditioning coach, also with the Chicago Bears, and that's something that he talks about in regards to weightlifting movements. So catching a clean and having triple flexion in the hip, the knee, and the ankle. And so Ben actually brings that up and using that to guide his accessory work. So doing hip work, doing different knee work. So if we're doing the Nordic hamstrings, the hamstrings are responsible for knee flexion. The hamstrings are also responsible for hip extension. And so if we can train that really, really well, then when we're actually using a test like a vertical jump, or if we're in a game and we have to jump and we have to land as well, the stronger our hamstrings are, or the stronger our hips are, the better we can absorb that energy. And then that also takes us into working specifically on the tibialis. So if we're gonna be doing a penultimate step before we go jump, or even grounding in that same position, our calves have to be strong to handle that brunt force. And so it's really important that we do all this work at least twice a week. I would say once to twice a week. And you can do any type of movement that involves knee flexion, any type of movements that involve hip flexion, and anything that's gonna involve ankle dorsiflexion. And these are the 3 key exercises that Ben likes to use, and I think they will drastically improve your vertical jump. So if you're struggling with a vertical jump and maybe you want to learn how you can dunk a little bit more, you can pick up the Vertical Jump Manifesto by clicking on the link down below in the description. Head over to garagestrength.com. Again, the Vertical Jump Manifesto, 12-week program to increase your vertical jump. And we also have a lot of other content that we filmed specifically with Ben, aka Knees Over Toes Guy. You can check out all those other videos here on YouTube. Remember, freaks, whenever you're heading into the gym, you always have to cultivate your power. Peace.